Hey, what is going on, guys? It is Jeff here. Today on the video Brawl Stars. In today's video, I'll be sharing some tips on Frank. And in the background gameplay, you'll see the games that got me to actually 1k Frank. And that's what I was really pushing for last season. I actually was not expecting to push to 1k Frank. But first I want to give two shout outs to OG and 9k. I'm over 9,000. So I'll link OG's YouTube channel in the description down below, as well as 9k's Twitter in the description down below. So I had a 700 Frank and OG invited me, so I was just playing some Frank, and it wasn't actually during this game, but it was like a couple hours. It was actually the day before, before this. Yeah, OG was pushing, and then we actually got OG up to 20k, which is super insane. Congratulations to him for also reaching the first player to reach 22,000. Just absolutely insane. So yeah, anyways, we just played a bit and I got 900 Frank. And so if you don't know, if you're 700 trophies, you're pushing up to 800. It's plus 3, and then from 800 to 900 is also plus 3. So it's basically the same. So I just kept pushing. But once you get to 900 trophies, it's a plus 2 per game. Except for Siege, of course, it's gonna be plus 4. So I decided to just why not go for 1k, since they were both gonna be on for quite a while. So I decided to just keep playing. So yeah, let's start with the best game modes for Frank. So the best game mode actually for Frank is Siege. The reason for that is because Frank's super is so good in Siege. It can stun the opponent's Ike, and it can also stun the opponent's boss when it's coming towards your safe with your Ike. And also with Frank's super, when you're able to stun someone, you can actually get off 2 shots before the stun wears off, unless of course they're out of range. And so that makes it really good for Frank, because once you stun someone, most of the time you're able to kill them, even if it's the only brawlers that couldn't actually die from one Frank super is those higher HP ones like Frank, Bull, Poke, Primo, and I guess Poke heals or something like that. But when you stun like, let's say, a higher HP brawl, your teammates can just help you take them out because they're standing still. You can just auto and you always hit them. But also the main reason that actually makes Frank so strong in Siege is because in Siege the meta brawlers are like Pam, Penny, Brock, and Barley, and sometimes Primo, Bull, and like Leon. And out of all those brawlers, the only ones who can actually cancel Frank's super would be Primo and Bull. So like the main counters to Frank, like Shelly, isn't actually played in Siege, because you don't ever see Shelly. And the only time you probably see Shelly is if you start running through a bunch of tanks like Bull and Primo. I guess you could play Shelly, but she just gets countered by too much brawlers. So that's why Frank is so good, because there's basically no brawlers that are really played in Siege that can cancel supers. So when you just have to basically be at the right place at the right time and use your super at the right time, and you're able to get a quick kill. And with Frank's super, usually when you stun someone, you're able to get that kill, because in Siege most of the brawlers, other than like Pam or the opponent Frank, they're pretty squishy. Like Penny, doesn't have that much health. So as a Frank, when you stun someone, most of the time you're either going to be able to take out your opponents or get them to super low HP. And once you're able to back them off or kill them, you're able to control the mid, which is really what all matters for Siege, is that you get all the bolts. And that's why you can also play Mortis, because you're just dashing in and out, grab the bolts, be able to spawn in your boss. Obviously, Mortis is not good in heist, or not heist, Siege, but he can still work out if you have the correct team. Okay, so the other game modes that are good for Frank is Gem Grab and Brawl. So now Frank isn't really that good in those 2 game modes, and the reason for that is because in Gem Grab, obviously Frank is a support or like aggro brawler, and the good brawlers for like an aggro brawler in Gem Grab would be like Nita, Spike, Terra, and those brawlers really just, Frank has a harder time, because obviously they have longer range, and as long as they keep the range against Frank can't really get up close. So the one map that Frank can work in is Stone Fort. The reason for that is because in that map a lot of tanks are played, and obviously tanks obviously do counter Frank, but before the tanks actually get their super, Frank can actually counter them pretty well. And if you're able to super at the right time, like supering the tanks before they get their super, you can really counter them. Obviously with the help of your teammates dealing the extra DPS, you can take out the opponent tanks pretty easily. But of course in that map, people are trying to counter the tanks, which they will try to play Shelly or like Rico, Spike, and those also counter Frank really hard. So you can play Frank in Stone Fort, he'll just have quite a tough time. Now for Brawl, he can also work super well, but of course in Brawl. You know, like Shelly are also being played, Primo can also be played, Daryl also are being played, and they just get countered. They just really counter Frank, and also like Nita, Spike, Jesse, they also super strong in Brawl, and Frank just has a tough time against those brawlers unless Frank gets a super. Obviously, if Frank gets a super, he really counters like Nita, Spike, Jesse. Because that one stun, you're able to take them out pretty fast, except for Nita. You can't actually 4-shot Nita, or I think you can 4-shot Nita. But of course, the Nita has her star power. I think it'll take more than like 5 or 6 shots sometimes if the bear continuously hits you and healing the Nita up. But with Frank, you just really want to push him in Siege. It's just such a good game. If you're able to get a good team, just push him in Siege. He's super strong. And my tips for pushing him is that you have to be really patient, because at the higher up like level, people play really safe. Even as a tank, they won't try to run up to you and try to attack you. They would hide behind walls and wait until you're close enough, and then come out and tank a couple hits, maybe like 1 or 2 shots, and then yeah, basically just get up close and destroy you. So with Frank, you have to be careful. You do have a ton of health, so you can go quite aggressive, but you have to kind of look at the situation. If you're going up against another like Shelly or like a brawler who can deal a ton of damage, then don't go up close. You can brawler like Poco, obviously, just run up to him. Like, he only deals around 1,000 damage, and you can just tank 8 of those shots and not even die. So you can just really go quite aggressive and either just push him back, or you're able to get up a better position to actually attack him. But the hardest thing with Frank is obviously to get up close to attack someone. So you can hide in a bush or try to just ambush your opponents, or if you see like one of your teammates pushing that brawler to, let's say, the left side, just go on the left side and just double team him, try to get off a super. And once you get a super, that's super important that you don't actually just use it right away or auto aim it, because it's also another thing, you don't want to auto aim Frank, because you can actually miss if you try to auto aim, because let's say someone's close enough to you, they can actually juke out your attack if you just auto aim, or if you just normally attack, they can also juke out your attack. So with your super, you do have to, usually when I super is I wait until the opponent is around halfway of my like super's radius, because that way they can't actually dodge it. The only way that they can dodge it if they move left or right, but as long as you're doing the correct position, they can't actually dodge your super. If they're at the edge of your super range and you super them, and if they're actually like, if they reflex pretty quick, or they know you're there, they can actually just dodge your super. And if you waste your super, it's really devastating, because like I said, it takes a long time to actually charge up that super, because people play really safe. So yeah, once you get your super, you're basically able to chain it pretty much, because once you stun someone, you're able to get 2 shots off before the stun wears off, and 2 shots means you get your super right back. So you can really chain those supers if you play Frank correctly and you don't miss your supers. Once you're able to chain that super, your opponents just have a super tough time. Okay, so another thing with Frank is that his super actually is longer than his main attack. I actually didn't know that until someone told me. I just never really paid attention to their range, because it looks basically the same amount of range. And so that's also really important, because if you're able to actually stun someone, a lot of people would just auto aim, because obviously standing still, they think just auto aim, because you can't miss if they're standing still. So that's why they auto aim. But another thing you have to keep in mind of is your super range is longer than your main attack. So if you stun someone, they might be too far away from your main attack. So what you always want to do, unless they're like right in front of you, is that when you stun someone, when you super them and you hit them, walk a bit, just maybe like walk 1 or 2 tiles closer to them, and then start attacking them. Because if your stun wears off, you're still going to be in range if they try to run away to get 1 or 2 more shots at them. But if you don't actually, if you just stand still and auto aim and you don't walk closer, sometimes you just miss the second shot and you won't get your super charged back, or you might not be able to kill the opponent. So that's just another thing that to keep in mind of, that it's a small change, it's a small thing that people might not notice, but it can really change off a match. So right there, I just spun a little because I knew that we were going to win. That was the last siege. Even if we didn't take out the Ike, the time would have ran out and we still won. And right there, you'll see that I'm only 2 games off from hitting 1K Frank. So this is super insane. And without siege, I don't think I would have done it, because the matchmaking time between each games took around 10 minutes each. So 10 minutes, I was just basically in bed watching YouTube while waiting in matchmaking. I'm pretty sure that's what we are all doing, because 10 minutes is just absolutely insane. And 10 minutes for 2 trophies, it would have took so long. And yeah, siege just really helped. And that's why in my opinion, siege is the best game mode to just push in. It's also just really fun to play. Like if you lose the first like fight between the first boss or the second boss, you can still win with like third boss. You just, you know, obviously the time goes on, it takes longer for the next siege to spawn in, so you can actually build a bigger boss and you can actually take out the siege in one push. A lot of times if you're, you know, if you play well enough, you can actually just take out your opponents in the first push, in the first like boss push, which is super insane because it only takes like 1 minute, I think like 1 minute and 30 seconds to just take it out with the first boss. So just super insane how fast you can actually win a siege match, and also super insane how fast you can actually lose trophies. But yeah, just I would not recommend playing siege if you are playing randoms or if you don't have a really great team. Just play it if you have a good team, because you know obviously the rewards are super high, but if you lose, you can lose a ton of trophies. Let's go on to who counters Frank. So the brawlers that counter Frank, obviously the shotgunners and also like Shelly, and also just long range brawlers, because you're able to keep your range against Frank and the Frank can't really get up close. So, but who does Frank counter? Frank doesn't really counter anyone. I guess Poco, because Poco has such low DPS as well as he has pretty slow reload speed, and you can easily just push Poco back because of your high HP. But once Frank actually gets a super, he counters basically every brawler, because even against tanks, if the tank doesn't have a super, of course, you can actually chain your super on them. So you can really counter tanks if you do it well, and as long as the tank doesn't actually get up close to you, you can just easily destroy the Frank, or the tank, I mean. So right here we got a pretty dominating lead. The opponent do have 6 bolts, so as long as we're able to take out the Ike in this push, which we will, we're able to pick up the victory. So that's actually the game up to 1000 trophy Frank. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and my tips, and I'll see you guys next one. Peace.